I personally got into it because I raced cyclocross for many, many years in Oregon. And I I really never, in so many things in my life, I can't ever really commit to just being stuck in a box. And so the constant training on the road and running and swimming wasn't really going to cut it. And so every year in September, really, I'd have my last triathlon of the year, first weekend in September, and then immediately just go over to cyclocross until about into November when that died off in Oregon.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre, skincare for athletes. Whether you're in the gym, on the mats, on the road, or in the pool, we protect your skin so you're more comfortable in your own body. To learn more, go to solpre.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today is kind of an upgraded version of me. If we were Pokemon, I think he's the evolved version of me. He's a doctoral student in music. He's a pro triathlete racing mostly Xterra, and he's also the club triathlon coach at ASU. Welcome to the show, Evan Pardi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And I was thinking about this earlier as I was coming back from the pool this morning. Just the Pokemon thing. I was just like, you're like doing what I like to do, but at a higher level. So I'm like, you're like definitely the evolved form, especially the mustache, because I can't grow a mustache like that.
Yeah, this is slightly toned down. There was about 2 weeks ago, it was like Yosemite Sam levels, and my wife wasn't as big of a fan of that. So this is the Aero version.
Okay.
So
I mean, you've got your Prefontaine poster in the background. Are you like trying to channel him?
Yeah. No, the pre poster sits above my computer. I mean, I went to the University of Oregon, so Pre is pretty much a demigod for not only the university but the entire state a whole. Really, what other great sports person has been so like born and bred out of the Oregon system, right? It's pretty much Pre. Yeah, I guess that's part of it. I don't know. I just think in the sport of tri, we have a lot of people who look all the same and tend to just kind of have the same sort of aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured, like, especially now that I race off-road, like the off-road scene's much more wild and crazy. So the mustache just fits into the culture a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since you're off-road, is like Aerodynamics playing quite as big a part as it would on road version?
It's a good question, and without getting too technical, it's definitely sticking its fingers into the sport. I mean, definitely if you look at UCI mountain bike racing, everybody's in skin suits, everybody's using like Aero road helmets now. I think it's not nearly as big of a factor. Like I mean, we're talking, it's probably fifth on the list of things that people would ever come thinking about when they come to performance, and so in that sense, not really. But at the same time, like some of the races on the bigger races in the Xterra circuit, at least in North America and South America, like Oak Mountain, for instance, in Alabama, where you do have like a chunky road segment that's fast. I mean, everybody's, getting low, trying to. So I think in that sense, like I usually wear this Aero road helmet a buddy of mine let me borrow for that race, just because why not? But yeah, I mean, you feel it. The biggest thing as a triathlete, I feel it. I used to feel it. My mustache swimming. That was always the weird. Like now I don't even notice it. When I shaved for our wedding in September, I was like, whoa, this is super weird. Like the water makes my lip feel cold. I don't like it. I felt like a shaved walrus.
So I did not shave my legs for the longest time because I'm like, it's not like what kind of aerodynamic advantage. Like I don't have very hairy legs, so I'm like, am I really gonna like this is dumb? There's no point in this. And then Specialized did that study and it was like, yeah, you do actually save watts. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And then getting to the pool, I was like, this is just really odd not having the hair. Like my coach was like kind of almost psyching me up, like, yo, it's gonna feel great, like you're gonna feel so slippery in the water. And I was like, I feel I feel uneasy more than.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think with that, I've like my legs are a scar-ridden fest. So, I think also just the crashing element for keeping them shaved. Like, I mean, when you mountain bike around Arizona, every mistake is punished by blood. I mean, you don't really get to crash in Arizona and not have blood because it's just so rocky. So in that sense, like cleaning stuff out is a lot easier, and like, that's a consistent and constant fear. So an issue.
I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole, but have you been to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs?
No, I haven't been to Colorado Springs since I was a kid.
If you have a chance to go, look at like the Olympic teams. I don't know if it's like the Hall of Fame or it's just there's a hall that has like photos of all the like past Olympic team members. I think it is the 76 track team has like the most epic hair and facial hair of all
Oh,
the
I'm sure.
groups. They like all look like pre or even more hair. Like every single one of them. And then before and after, almost nothing. Just that particular year, everybody was doing it.
Well, I like it. I like it. I like to bring a little flair into our current state of triathlon.
So I have to ask because I haven't talked to anybody and I actually don't know anybody because it's not my world. But I mean,
Sure.
how do you get into Xterra? Because I mean, for mainstream society, triathlon is kind of on its own little thing, and then Xterra is even to me like a subset of that. So it's like you've really gone down a
Oh,
rabbit hole.
we're a fringe of a fringe, right? I mean,
Right.
triathlon as a whole is yeah. You ask the average person, and they're like, "Is that the thing in Hawaii?" Or they're like, "Don't you ski and shoot when you do that?" So you kind of, right? You get the two, depending on which geography area of the country
Right.
you live in. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think Xterra, yeah. So how it kind of came into being again, like used to be very reliant on Ironman, right? That's why the World Championship was always kind of uh, a few weeks after Kona to make it so like, oh well, people will hopefully just come to Hawaii, and it used to actually only be two, like come to Hawaii and then stay, recover from Ironman, and then do this weird other thing on mountain bikes and stuff. It was originally called Aquaterra. But it's always been on Maui. It's always been on the west slopes of Maui. But as of course many things like the sports boomed and the specificity has boomed, and so yeah, I personally got into it because I raced cyclocross for many years in Oregon, and I really never, in so many things in my life, I can't ever really commit to just being stuck in a box. And so the constant training on the road and running and swimming wasn't really going to cut it. And so every year in September, really, I'd have my last triathlon of the year, first weekend in September, and then immediately just go over to cyclocross until about into November when that died off in Oregon. And then I would then slowly get back into tri. And so it was a very natural progression for me after I left Oregon to look into Xterra because there wasn't much in Oregon. I didn't ride mountain bikes, so yeah. So I already had off-road experience in cyclocross, and I had just often taken my cyclocross bike out and done basic single track and just like messed around and was like, can I ride this? Sure, I can ride it. And so I would do all sorts of stuff on a drop bar. I was doing stuff on drop bar bikes before it was cool, just so the bike industry and the gravel industry know that yes, people did dumb shit on drop bar bikes before gravel bikes were around. So I was out riding stupid trails all over town without a $8,000 specific gravel adventure bike. But so I was well versed in that. And then I don't know. I moved here. We have a ton of trails around the area, and I got a mountain bike. And I was like, I should do Xterra, and then pretty much quickly fell in love with it. even though I was racing a lot, mostly road still. But yeah, I think the uniqueness of every course is its greatest strength, especially where nowadays Ironman is pretty much neutering every course just to be flat and fast and in boring places. So, Xterra is kind of the I don't know, the thinking man's alternative to Ironman. Every single turn of every single off-road course is an infinite number of problems and an infinite number of, great successes through that corner, and that only gets multiplied over, 100, 200, 300 turns. And so, to really hammer my point home, I think Xterra forces a greater mental challenge than any road race I've ever done because of that. And then, not only is it just a mountain bike, but you got to go suffer through a trail run, which also proves to be a different, set of challenges.
Yeah.
All the while, your heart rate sitting at like, at Pan American Championships, I hit 190 spikes 4 times on the run just to get up stuff. You're never going to see that in your Ironman athlete.
I mean, preferably you're not going to spike that high just because
right.
the race is so long, How long? How long is an Xterra race for you? Like, do they vary in distance, or are they relatively standard?
So, and again, that's my point. Every course is highly unique. So,
okay.
The pro Xterra Portland has a pro race and has a nice pro field, and that course in Portland took me an hour and 59 minutes, and the winner was like about 30 seconds ahead of me, 40 seconds ahead of me. So we were right under 2, with the bulk of the age group field taking about 2 hours and 40 minutes. Maui, I had a horrible day. I finished in 3 hours and 5 minutes, and I was, back end of the men's pro field. And the winner was like 245-ish, 242. Most age groupers were 340 to 350 to 4 hours, with a lot of people coming in over 4 hours. And then so that's kind of the spectrum. I mean, you're anywhere from like under 2 hours to 3 hours or so, and that's all for the pros, and then the age group is even wider. So, and again, mileage of these things differ. Alabama is like a crazy long 23-mile mountain bike, which just it seems like it never ends out there. And then Beaver Creek is like 12 miles, but it's 12 miles and 3,600 feet straight up. So and the course is very, and then same in Victoria, Canada is like 11 and a half miles straight up, and then literally like enduro, chunky, awful rock droppy stuff right back on the backside. So it's very, very, very different courses that sort of, sometimes the bike is short compared to the run. Sometimes the run is like takes forever. So again, very, very, very independent courses, very independent racing. And so strengths and weaknesses kind of get played out across a very long drama, as opposed to being much more in line with what you see on a consistent circuit, like with Ironman, for instance.
You kind of made me think about 2 different people I've talked to. One is this author. He's a travel writer, Will McGough. I spoke to him on episode 28 about his book Swim Bike Bunk. So basically, he came from never having done a triathlon at all, a little bit of swimming background, but that's about it. And then prepared and did an Ironman in like 3 months. And in the book, it's like all about his trials and tribulations of trying to make it to the race, and does he finish, and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things, the attitudes he encountered, and you said something that made me think about this, is that like Ironman isn't what it used to be. You mentioned like Ironman basically neutering the courses so that they're flat, they're fast. They essentially cater to age group athletes that want to finish, by bringing the difficulty down, not having challenging ups and downs and technical courses and all that kind of stuff. It makes me wonder, maybe not in totality, but do you share any kind of attitude in terms of like new sport or like different sport in terms of Xterra, or there's a lot of this movement in like the Spartan races right now where they're non-standard courses. Is that more fun than standardized racing?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think unequivocally it's more fun. I think the overall experience generated creates a uniqueness to the event that you did. You, whoever you are, age group, pro, whatever, everybody just wants a sense of community in this world. And nothing will generate that more organically in our sport than a unique race. Let me give you a road example. Escape from Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the best triathlon I ever did. As a age grouper, as a pro, I didn't even have that good of a race. And as a hyper competitive person, it's usually like your best race is your favorite race in the world, right?
Yeah.
Like we all know that's true, but most people don't want to admit it. But that race just stands out to me as a total pinnacle of a great experience that's so linked intrinsically to a location. Yes, it just happened to be a horrible federal penitentiary for a while, but we'll look past that sort of thing. But that tie into the location where you feel that the city cares about you just for a couple hours, which it does. I mean, you race Sunday morning. There's a veritable armada of boats out on the bay. You swim in this insane location where you look up and you're sighting between Coit Tower and the Golden Gate, right? So it's every step of the way. It's indubitably San Francisco, right? You get out of the swim, you run along through the old Presidio where my father used to work, which was always it was a cool experience for him. It was a cool experience for me. That's very tied to that spot. Then you do this bike ride up into the hills and like blah, blah, blah. And people are out in their apartments having coffee, having mimosas, hucking, yelling at you, all sorts of stuff, right? So it's fun. It's so linked to that spot. So that's a race that just is doing it right. Everybody who does it, I've never heard a single word that's like bashed it. People will say it's hard because it's hilly as hell, and that run is a veritable death march. But that all being said, it creates just an insane buzz. Look, they're on like a lottery system, an auction, blah blah blah. So yeah, so yes, anything that sort of garners specific interest in a specific location only helps our sense of community. And I think Xterra also, as I was talking to the president of Xterra a couple of times, who's just totally an awesome person, and she was saying like, they have a joke. It's like Xterra is the dark side of triathlon, and it really is because the individual elements of all the courses is sort of another reflection of kind of what happens in that little community. Everything gets built up very, very tightly. So I guess in a lot of ways, yes, it is like the old grassroots days of tri. It's very fun. That individuality lends itself to just people enjoying each spot. And so you have less of the, wild push to demand certain consistencies, I suppose. It also forces more on the individual in the race, right? Like you're not necessarily guaranteed a easy race. On the contrary, you're guaranteed a very hard race. And for instance, 8 stations on the run, you're going to do a trail run. There might only be 3 on your 10K. And they might not even be that, you're not going to get them at mile 2 and 4. You're going to get it at 1.1 and 2.7. And then, here's one at 3.2. And then you don't get any for the rest of the race, right? Because just the nature of the course. So yeah, I think this pushback and the Xterra community at large that's cultivated by these unique locations, and then they're kind of their tours, and that idea that like as opposed to Ironman, which does not have any national international tour, there's no prizes for consistency. There's simply prizes for one-day performance, whereas we condone a whole array of races that then work together to form a tour. All of that just lends itself to consistency in terms of in community engagement and people being happy with the product.
You consistently talking about a sense of community, and sometimes I wonder if like the community itself evolves, where it's like, I kind of think about it like this, like where you are, like you mentioned, like kind of grassroots days of triathlon, or maybe Xterra now, or Spartan races, or just like more niche sports. It's like these people do it. Like, what did you say? Did you? I'm probably paraphrasing, but not quoting you. I think you said you did dumb shit on drops before, like there were specialized
Oh yeah.
bikes. So it's like there's that ideal where it's like, hey, let's just go do some dumb shit and have a good time, and then let's make it into a race, and then that's a community, and then somebody like then you start getting those are early adopters basically, and then you start getting people that are like, well, that sounds cool, or like they bring their own objective to it, and then slowly as more and more people start coming out, then either the sport adapts to them or they fall away. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, and there's always that balance, right? Just in like any business model, there's a sort of balance from that original core user group into what it ultimately becomes into. That being said, I think where Xterra is now, and that's what I, as opposed to Spartan races, which I know very, very little about. But for Xterra, I think what they have struck is a really good balance in terms of maintaining, core user support in the form of not like passionate age groupers, continual pro support, but while catering it to a broader audience at large, but also being very fiscally responsible and attempting to create a balance, as opposed to realizing like a lot of, let's be honest, Ironman is not alone here. A lot of the running scene, the running companies, for instance, Tough Mudder just filed for bankruptcy, 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. So you look at these things where people just go for acquisition, grab, and it becomes, all money, right? Like, I understand there's a business element, but when it becomes money, then you lose that core group very quickly. Whereas Xterra has looked at a much more consistent, steady, smaller growth model. Look, I relate to it because that's my own history and all of the things I've ever done, right? I never exploded. I never went from like, oh, in 2 years of training, I became a pro, or like musically, I've been playing music for damn near almost 20 years now. So I guess in that sense, to bring it for that personal example into the business realm, I think you look at a company like Xterra that's been around for a decent amount of time now, over 25 years, and they're building something slowly and consistently and attempting to match it with the different market trends that happen, but nothing like Wanda Sports and Ironman, where it's just like, oh, well, we need to make $150 million this year in profit, right? Whereas Xterra is owned and run by people who I go and speak to, and I'm like, I trust you. You're a great individual. I understand your problems. I certainly don't want to take them on, but I really can tell that you have the best interests of me as a pro, me as a consumer, the average person, the average consumer of the sport. All of these people, like, I feel very comfortable with that leadership base, so to speak. Whereas in many other aspects of our triathlon community, I don't have that faith. And I think that's simply because the idea of growth, this idea of like catering has all of a sudden rapidly, when everything has to go up, as opposed to, let's just a steady marginal hand and keep a good, good firm grasp of the rudder might have dissipated some. If that sort of answers your question, I think.
Yeah, I think I can identify both with both those tendencies. Like, as a business person, I struggle with that a lot of times, where it's like, I see a lot of business stories because I own 2 companies and this is what I do. But you see stories about, the narrative that's popular to push is like the overnight success, which I know is bullshit. But even at that, they'll say, this person went from nothing to 7-8 figure business in 3 years, which is extraordinarily fast. Versus, looking at a company that says, hey, like, we're growing 30-40% year over year, which is good. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And if you do that over a long period of time, like, you're going to be killing it eventually. But it's just like, almost human tendency to be like, I want it now, especially like in the culture with phones and everything.
Right.
It's like we
Right.
want it right now.
Exactly.
And so yeah, I deal with that as well. So I mean, it's good to know that, at least in your opinion, because I obviously have never met these people, that the people in charge of Xterra have that longevity, long point of view to say, marginal gains over time build up to be something larger versus risking everything by trying to explode in 2 years or
Well,
whatever.
I also just simply think the personal element, and again, as somebody who's raced in the elite field, like that, the way that system is run for elites in comparison to WTC, is just so much more conducive to like keeping people in it. Like as soon as I got in there, I just felt a wonderful sense of kindness, not only from the staff, but from the people racing. And I've always been a fan of this, perhaps, ideologue idea of like sort of gentlemanly racing, right? Like I started my athletic career in rowing, which is like the most aristocratic based good old boys sport you could think of.
What about
But
polo?